song,
John, I think the essence of a great life story, for me, it's two things. People's lives who are particularly interesting to me have some point of connection with me, something about my life and their life that has some point of similarity. And yours and mine do. We're of similar age. We have some things in our lives that are similar. But what makes that interesting for me is when a story has points of similarity, but also points of great difference. And I think of you that way. I think of your life in some ways as being parallel to mine, and in many ways being very different from mine. And so the points of similarity make it identifiable to me, but the points of difference make it quite interesting. And so you and I become good friends, and you've told me some of the background of your life. Why don't you get us started by going way back to the beginning, telling us where you were born and telling us some of those early formative years, what they were about.
I was born in Toronto. I grew up in Brampton, which is not that far from Toronto, west of Toronto. We did spend a couple of years in Newfoundland, which was my father's home province. The years in Brampton of growing up, those were very tumultuous years. My father was alcoholic and abusive, and it was not a pleasant childhood. It was kind of tough. There was a lot of things that happened that shouldn't happen.
And you were part of a big family.
Yeah, I'm one of 10 kids. I'm in the middle. I have I have 3 older brothers. One is deceased. Now I have an older sister and 4 younger sisters and a younger brother. My brother that was 51 weeks older than I am, we were raised going to the Salvation Army because they had a bus that came around, and so Mom and Dad kicked us out of the house Sunday morning, said, "Get on the bus, you're going to church," and so we did, and it was an enjoyable time. And I guess I was about 10 years old when I first made a kind of a commitment to Christ. Life was pretty tumultuous, and this Christ, the offer, the understanding of the gospel was great. It was here's a life of peace, or an understanding of peace, and that's tumult. Something that, as a young person, I didn't see a lot of. Anyway, this older brother was killed in a car accident the weekend that he was just heading off to go to officer training school for the Salvation Army. Now, that brought a lot of unrest into the home, and my dad said he didn't want anybody in the house believing in Christ anymore because of this incident. I had this great journey in mind, this great trip across Canada with some friends, and I told the friends and I told everyone that I left when I was, before I was 20, I was in April of '76, we headed out. We were starting on the West Coast, and I said that I was going to find out whether God was real or not. That was the purpose of the trip for me. That was the fleece that I laid down. And we were a few weeks into the trip, and we came across a commune. In this commune, there was a great big King James Bible open on the coffee table, and they were living like Acts chapter 4, having all things common, and they were studying the scriptures, and there
Where was this, John?
This was in Terrace, British Columbia,
okay.
Way up north there, and I said, "This is interesting. This is really interesting." There was a number of young people my age. There was a family that was the core, and everybody was taking part in everything that had to be done. And I said to the rest of the team, I said, this looks like a good place for me to figure myself out, to figure out whether or not God is real. Check this out. I stayed there 5 years.
Did the rest of the team continue on?
The rest of the team continued on. One other fellow decided to join me. The rest of the team continued on. And that brought a little bit of strife. The trip was difficult, but life in that commune was tough. the moral standard was extremely high when I landed there. Discipline was challenging. There was discipline for this or that or another. Reading, I did a lot of studying. I became very familiar with my King James Bible. I became very, very familiar with it. And it was what I went to whenever I wanted to read, when I wanted to learn something or to understand what was going on. And so because I was very into what I was reading, I was very much interested in what the scriptures had to say. When there was inconsistency, I would challenge it. But the scripture says this, and we're doing this. Why? And that question, why, over those 5 years began to gnaw at some people right to the core.
But that question is deeply rooted in your DNA, isn't it?
It's
You're
it's
a
in
why
there.
guy. You
Yes.
always need to know why.
Why is, I need to know, yes.
Yeah.
I need to know that what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're acting is in accordance to what we say we believe or say we're about. So if we say we're going to be Christ followers, then our lives should line up with Christ. That just made sense to me. That challenge was answered with, I don't think this is the place for you anymore. And so now comes one of those major milestones in my life.
Yes. After 5 years at the commune.
After 5 years, my family has not accepted my commune life well. So I don't have a place to go home. Ontario does not have any draw because there is no family left. It exploded while I was gone, and there's nothing to go to there. I have no other place to go in British Columbia. We are at this time living in Grand Forks. So in the morning, or that evening before I left, Bob Dylan had put out an album called Slow Train, and one of the songs had some words in it, something like, Lord, keep me where you are, Lord, guard my heart. And I spent hours that evening into the night praying, Lord, I don't know what's coming, and I need you to guide me. I need you to direct my heart. I need you to direct my path, because I have no idea where to go, what to do. I'm completely without steering at this point. So in the morning they gave me $80. So I had $80 and the backpack that I landed there with, and the clothes I had, and my sleeping bag.
And this is early 1980s?
This is 1981.
Okay.
So I didn't even get a ride to town. We were about 8-10 miles out of town. And so I hitchhiked into town. And I went to the bus depot. And I split the money in half. I put $40 in my pocket, and I said to the lady at the wicket there, I said, where will $40 take me? She said, if you go west, it'll take you to Vancouver. If you go east, it'll take you to Calgary. Well, Vancouver rains too much. Give me a ticket to Calgary. That's how I made the decision. And so I got on the bus that evening. I'd spent some money buying supper and whatnot. And I rode the bus, and in the morning we got off in Lethbridge, and I was sitting with this fellow who was on the bus as well. He was kind of a punk rocker from those days, and I couldn't relate to him. But the waitress was really bubbly, and he said, I can't stand morning people like that. And I said, yeah, it's been a rough night. We were trying to sleep on the bus. Anyway, we landed in Calgary. I tried to get a job. There's no job for non-union people. I'm not a union guy. I don't belong to any unions, and so no work for you. So I hopped on a city bus and I headed back west. I got out of town on the bus and I started hitchhiking again, and a guy dropped me off. He said, you might be able to get a job in at the Rafter 6 Ranch. It's a dude ranch. I said, okay. So I walked in there and I said, I'm looking for some work. They said, you ever tended bar? No, I've never tended bar. I said, I don't even drink. He said, perfect, you'd be a great bartender. We could sure use you. And I said, I don't think I really want to be a bartender. It just doesn't ring with me. And he says, well, there's lots of young ladies here that come from overseas and it might be really nice. And I said, no, I don't, that doesn't really work for me. So I walked back out to the highway, started hiking back east. Got another ride.
Back towards Lethbridge.
Back towards Calgary.
Calgary,
And I
okay.
said, I got to find something. And so I asked the guy who's giving me a ride, I said, do you know anybody around here who might use a hand? You know, it's ranch country. And he says, why don't you go into Cochrane? And I said, okay, I'll go into Cochrane. So I hitchhiked into Cochrane, and I dropped my backpack at the police station. I had $5 or $10 left. So I went and I bought a meal. I said, well, I might as well eat. I walked out, and there were a couple of old guys standing on the side of the street there, just chatting. It was July. And I walked up to them. I said, do you guys know of anybody who might need a hand? You know, I'm looking for some work. And they gave me a list of 3 names. And the third name was George Dutchick. And I called his first 2, they said no. And I called George's number, and I got his wife. And we might need somebody, but you'll have to talk to my husband, he's out in the field. Okay, great.
That's more
she's-
promising than the first 2.
Yeah, there's something there. So anyway, I hitchhiked out, found the ranch. George comes in. I'm sitting in the kitchen waiting for him. He comes in at dusk. So it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I said, I'm looking for some work. And he said, we don't need anybody. Great. So I grab my backpack, start walking out, and he catches me in the driveway. He says, well, you can cut the hedge. The hedge is massive. And he says, you can stay in the bunkhouse. So anyway, I said, why, thanks. And so I went to the bunkhouse, and I realized what had just happened. It had been 36 hours since I'd left the commune. The Lord had taken me to a new situation in life, given me a job and a place to stay. And I was astounded. I had asked him to take care of me, to guide me, and he put me here. And it was in a completely different situation where they didn't care who I was or where I came from, but that I could work. And that 36-hour incident in my life has been an anchor, a reference point, a go-to when I'm trying to make a decision.
Why, John?
It is evidence to me that God is caring, that He is interested in me. And that's both humbling and uplifting. It has told me that He cares. And all that I've been through in my life up to that point, I'm 25 years old at that point, everything, He cares. He cared, right? And He's there. No matter what's going on, He's still listening. So I worked there for 3 years. And I spent the first 4 or 5 months journaling because I was in such an emotional state from not knowing where to go and what to do, and my life had just exploded again. And so I spent that time journaling and trying to figure it out. It was pretty tough. I knew nothing about horses. I knew very little about planting crops. I knew nothing. I knew how to turn a wrench. I knew how to use a chainsaw. I knew how to do a bunch of things. And so the first rain day I was working for them, they had brought the equipment back to the Quonset and they had to repair some things. And I walked up there and said, yeah, I can do that. I tore it apart, welded it up, put it back together, and he said, you're hired. After 3 months, I said, so how long is my job for? And he says, as long as you want it. You're here forever if you want it. If you want to stay, you can stay forever.
Now, you've had a lot of life since then, because that's 1981. Tell us about when you met Sandy, because you and Sandy have been married for a lot of years.
Yeah. Sandy's what took me from the ranch. Sandy and I met in Calgary. She was a friend of my sister's. My sister wanted to see her friend who had moved to Calgary, and I said, okay, let's go see her. And so we met, and that was an amazing relationship, of course. You know, she's a stunning lady. And we had children. And so when you have children, being a ranch hand's not the place to be. It's, you cannot own anything besides your pickup truck and your horse, your saddle. So there's not a life for, if you want to provide for your family, it will do that. It'll just put bread on the table, but that's all it'll do. It'll never give them security. And so I decided, well, I'd go back to school, and then I decided to go back to school and become a carpenter. And I did my apprenticeship in Calgary, and then our third child was on its way, and so we said, well, I think we should raise our kids within earshot of family. So we decided to move back to Ontario, and so we came here and
Here to North Bay.
moved to North Bay. And I became a construction superintendent, and then there was a slowdown in '96, and I started my own business because I walked away from the company because they had nothing, and I started my own, and it went well. God provided. He constantly provided. We are stunned. When I am in my living room and I look outside at all that surrounds me that He's given to me, I am stunned. Why me? Why did you give this to me? And that attitude has led me to other opportunities. I understand that everything that I have is a gift. Peter talks about...
That's your worldview, isn't it?
That's my worldview, that everything that I have is a gift from God, because I know that what I came from. I know where I came from, and I know that it's by His grace that I have anything. A family, a job, a life,
Beautiful
a
property.
faith, a fantastic place to live, absolutely better than anybody else in the world.
Yes. And you know,
That's
you
my-
know what you talk about because you've been a lot of places.
I've been a lot of places, and so opportunities start to knock on the door, and one of them was humanitarian work. And I got a call from a friend at church. He said, there was a hurricane down in Grenada and it wrecked the place, and they could sure use you down there. Would you mind going down? I said, well, okay. So I called up Samaritan's Purse, and I
Samaritan's
said,
Purse is a non-governmental organization that does humanitarian and aid work around the world.
yes, they're pretty big now. In those days, if I called them up, they said, yeah, we can arrange a mission trip for you. And I said, oh, okay. And they said, that'll be, I think it was $1,700 or something. So I talked to Sandy about it and said, what do you think? Yeah, sure, let's do that. So we put out the money, and I went down to Grenada, and I had a blast. I had the best time of my life. What happened was, we were building shelters, and I built a shelter for this guy who was 76 years old, whose total life savings was a couple of sheets of tin, a pallet, a piece of foam, and a potato. That was his total life net worth. We landed there one day, and late in the day, and I just said wanted to look at the site, and so I could set it up for the team and whatever, and I said, we'll be back in the morning to build you a shelter. We came back in the morning, and that night he'd gone into the bush, gathered a bunch of branches, made a broom, and was sweeping the ground before our feet. Wow. I had not run into gratitude like that at all forever for anyone that I'd ever done anything for. I built a lot of things by this time, and this was amazing. Mm-hmm. This was amazing, that you were impacting his life in such a dramatic way. Mm-hmm. And you got to speak about what you believed with him. He asked questions, why are you here? And so anyway, then I got more opportunities, and they kept coming and kept coming. And
so Grenada would be how long ago now, John?
that was 2005.
Okay.
That was 2005. 2009, Samaritan's Purse asked Sandy and I, would we go over to Jordan for a year? So I went and I talked to my accountant, and I said, how do I do that? I have my own company. How do I go to Jordan for a year? She says, pay your taxes, pay your insurances, and go. I'll look after the books. Really? She said, yeah, I'll look after it for you. Thank you. So we got on a plane and we went to Jordan. Now, I'd been in a couple of places in the world, but I had no idea that I had a culture. I didn't realize, I thought everybody lived like I live. I mean, what? How different can it be?
Right.
But this is a Muslim Arab culture. I was shocked. I saw things that I just completely didn't understand. But I also began to learn that you get to you get an opportunity to speak into lives when you're serving. People ask you why, and they want to talk to you because you come from a different place, and they want to know, why would you come here to the middle of the desert into this heat, dryness, this poverty? Why would you come here? And you explain why you're there, why God has given me so much, it's time for me to give back. And so I got to do that in some astounding ways and speak into so many lives. And so it's continued, and then the Red Cross called and said, would you mind coming and giving us a hand? And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. And so they said, we'd like you to set up a hospital in the Philippines. All right, and they trained me on how this hospital gets set up. So I flew down to the Philippines with a team and looked after setting up a field hospital, and I loved it. This is simple. I can set up a hospital for sure. And so I set up a few hospitals for them. I looked after cholera and Ebola and whatever else. And then Samaritan's Purse called again and said, we would sure like it if you could go to Mozambique and set up a hospital for us. Sure, let's do that. So I went to Mozambique for Samaritan's Purse and set up a hospital there. And I've got some experience now overseas, and I've learned that people are similar. Their cultures have them seeing things sometimes differently, but they're similar. And what I really learned is that often women are oppressed. In a lot of cultures, there's a lot of oppression. And my job, one of my jobs I found out in Mozambique was that I was a hiring guy. Oh, okay. I thought I was just a setup guy. But okay, I'll hire. So I hired lots of people. I hired cleaners. I hired laundry people. I hired a cook. I hired guys to help me set things up. I hired lots of people. But I treated everybody like they're worth something. And in a culture or an economy where poverty is the order of the day, where they've lost everything, we are setting up, and I was emptying boxes for equipment that was in boxes, and I was putting all these boxes aside, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with all these boxes. And I had fenced our site, and I was throwing some boxes in the pile, and I looked over, and there was a couple of 3 young kids looking at me, and I said, do you guys want some boxes? And they don't speak English, and I don't speak Portuguese. I think it was Portuguese in Mozambique. They just nodded their head when I pointed at the boxes. So I grabbed a few boxes, and I walked over, and I tossed them over to the fence, and I walked back, and I was going to get some more boxes, and I looked. They had run off. They'd taken the boxes and run. I learned that night was the first night they slept on a dry bed. They slept on the cardboard.
That you were throwing out.
That I was throwing out. I was just humbled. I was just, wow. And so I learned that the people that I'm hiring, they don't have roofs on their houses, and their houses are full of mud. And so I treat them, I'm so honored to be able to give them something. Like what a huge honor to be able to represent so many people that want to help, and you get to be the guy who gives them a job, who gives them cardboard or whatever else it is they need. And so Mozambique, it's getting close to the end of my time there, and what happened was I had a right-hand man. I always find a right-hand man, somebody who's a translator, knows his way around town, is a driver. So anyway, my right-hand man, Fabruk, came to me and said, Mr. John, 2 of the ladies over there are arguing over a tarp. They both want a piece of tarp that you threw aside. I said, oh, can you go and sort that out, because I don't want to get involved. Being a local guy, he just didn't want to be involved between these 2 factions. So I walked over and I said, Fabruk, come with me. And I said, I need you to translate. Mm-hmm. So I started telling him telling him to tell the ladies, I gave him a sentence and I said, tell the ladies, one time there was this old king, a long time ago there was this king. And there were a couple of women fighting over a baby. And he's a Muslim fella, so he knows the story already. And so they're starting to smile. And I said, do I need to go get my knife and cut this tarp in half? Or who should I give it to? And the one lady said, she should have the tarp. And I said, thank you. Thank you. And I walked away. And that incident died there. Then it was time for me to leave. So I thought, I'm just going to sit here outside my tent, and for the last couple of hours of my time here, I'm just going to look around and see how things are rolling, because I've got to hand over to somebody else. And I'm looking around, and I don't see any of my people. There's no laundry ladies over there. There's no cleaning staff. There's no cook over at the cook area. My guys aren't showing up. Where's everybody? Oh, great. They know I'm leaving, so they took off. Bummer. So anyway, I get up and I start walking around, and I go back to the warehouse area, and everybody's sitting there in a big circle. Oh, great. So I walk up and I say, what's up? What's up? We've been having a meeting, Mr. John. I see that. What's going on? We have decided that Mr. John needs to stay another week. And I said, oh, guys, Miss Sandy will not be happy. My wife wants me home. I said, you guys honored me tremendously. No one is complaining about the hospital being dirty. No one's complaining about that there's not enough water for what they want to do. Nobody's complained that they're hungry, there's not enough food. Nobody's complained about anything that is our responsibility to me. Nobody said anything. You guys have done a wonderful job. And I made it a point to train the guys that were my maintenance guys on how to build the water system. I made them use the tools, and I trained them so that we put a water system into the adjoining hospital that had been destroyed. We rebuilt the water system so that it could function. And so I left them with a skill set, and I try to do that now. All that is to say that God gave me a skill set. And my skill set is rather practical. And I realize I'm in kind of a unique position. He's blessed me. I'm not really worried about retirement. He's looked after that. But I would like to encourage everyone that if you're a Christ follower, your skill set is a gift from Him. It is, you may have gone to university. You might have, worked hard at whatever it is that you've done, and you've learned it well, but He gave you that opportunity. You're not that 76-year-old guy who lived in a country that had no opportunity, and he could not even afford to leave the country. There was no opportunity for him to leave. So at 76, his total assets were a couple of sheets of tin and a foam and a pallet and a potato. So I realize that God has blessed me. I've gotten to see that I was born, yes, into a rough situation, but into an opportunity, and He blessed me here. He blessed the work of my hands. He blessed my attitude. He blessed my heart. He blessed me with a family. He blessed me with a great church to be a part of. He blessed me with opportunities to serve in my congregation. He blessed me with opportunities to serve on my street. Your neighbors should know that you're there for them. So that's kind of what my life has come to at this point.
So you're following Jesus of Nazareth, who lived 2,000 years ago, but you know that He's living today, and you're making your life count as being His hands and His feet in this part of the world in the 21st century.
That's true. That's true. There's a bit of a caveat. I'm not perfect. I've got areas in my life that definitely need tending to. And my wife needs to give me a cuff up the back of the head the odd time, and I think she might like doing it. I screw up constantly. I screw up in relationships. I screw up in financial decisions. I screw up in commitments. But I know that he's watching and that he cares and that he's going to keep using me. I was in Sudan last July, and I was talking with one of the other people that was with Samaritan's Purse, and she said, God used me. And I said, I know, isn't it amazing? It's amazing that he used, you know who you are, and he used you. That's pretty amazing.
Right. Well, John, thank you for telling us your story today.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long.